Well, please record it because I want us to be able to go back to it if we have questions that come up later on. Luke's time is valuable, and I don't want to keep going back to Luke over and over again. I know he's willing to answer questions, but if we have this recorded, it'll be something that we can even share with new people once we hire new people, when and if we hire new people to come on board. So with that, Luke, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to go silent.
All right. Thank you. And hopefully the style guide we'll look at later will also be a source of being able to answer questions. Inevitably, there's things that happen and situations you get into where you feel like you don't know what to do. But the good news for you is that happens to me too. With logos like this, there's always some new thing that, you know, how should we apply this logo here or there? And if I make any sudden movements, it's because I'm having trouble getting this sunlight out of my face. And so sometimes I catch a direct ray of sunlight. So if I spook, you'll know why. Let's see, do I have the ability to share? There we go. Can you all see that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is the first thing I kind of wanted to share today. This is some thinking that I kind of go by when it comes to what I call brand identity design, otherwise known as logo design or a word mark design. But I have these goals that I want to accomplish when it comes to giving somebody a brand or a brand logo. And these are things that at the end of the project, you know, Dr. Motes and I talked about this at the beginning of the project. I said, you know, this will be our grading sheet. At the end, we want to make sure we have accomplished these things. And these things are not fancy. They're pretty straightforward. But I wanted to cover them with you today so that you can kind of see maybe why we got to where we got at the end of the project. And these are the elements for iconic design. So number one, and this is my number one thing when it comes to logos, we just want to keep it simple. A logo does not have to carry all the weight for what it represents. It just needs to be simple. It needs to be reproducible. It needs to be able to be applied in many different situations. And so the less things that happen with it, the more you have a chance to put it in what I call like winning situations in its life. Number two is incorporate tradition. We didn't really have, you know, Epic's kind of new, so this wasn't a huge piece of this. However, we do have the tradition of GRREC that we want to honor and incorporate. So we do have ways that we're doing that with the GRREC river and just the acronym on a couple of the logos. We want to aim for distinction. We want something to be special about it, something that kind of grabs your attention and it makes it a little bit different from everything else that you saw that day. We want something that you can commit to memory. So something where you look at it and you go, somebody, when you ask them later, you know, what did you remember? Do you remember who that was? And like, yeah, that's the people with the logo with the such and such. And they just kind of see it and they go, oh, yeah, I remember that. We want to think small. That means that every logo eventually has to get down to, you know, kind of under an inch big, literally small. Whether it be just a few pixels on a presentation or a Twitter icon or a social icon, it has to get small and still be legible. And the last thing is focus on one thing. The example I always give here is, let's say you were doing a logo for something that was about France. I'll let you do a croissant or I'll let you do the Eiffel Tower, but you can't do both. You got to just pick one of those things and kind of let that be the metaphor for the aesthetic or the visual in that scenario. You can't try to let, again, back to keeping it simple, you can't let the logo try to do too much. You just want it to kind of focus on one thing. The next part we discussed was color. And these were kind of from the get-go, this was the palette that we were trying to incorporate. The GRREC blue, the GRREC green as part of it, and then kind of giving Epic its own color, which could be purple. We've got orange folded in as kind of a secondary color. It's not in the actual logo, but it fits nicely with all of these and can be used in things like presentation materials, or as a design element in other spots. And then black is just kind of this neutral that we need to be able to use in conjunction with it, because first of all, so much stuff is done in just black and white in general. And then second of all, it creates such legibility and clarity in a spot where we're using a bunch of other colors. It can kind of stabilize a design when you pair it with that other stuff. We had multiple blocks that we needed to incorporate. And by blocks, I mean just elements of the logo. And the blocks were the Epic acronym, the Epic words, so the literal words that the acronym stand for, and then the GRREC, the nod to GRREC in some way. And so there's all these different ways that we could have incorporated these blocks, and then we also knowing that sometimes you're going to need a vertical logo, sometimes you're going to need a horizontal logo. So there's different ways that we have to be able to piece those blocks together. And there may be times where we don't need the words or we don't need the GRREC nod, but we need to have this flexible logo that can be different things in different situations based on what's needed. And then it could even be contained. So the GRREC could be part of the acronym on, with the words around it or something like that. That's what we ended up doing with the cookie. So these are just all the things that were being considered before I ever went and tried to do anything and make any concepts. Does that make sense? Does that sound loony to anyone, or is that all kind of sound like rational thinking? So, whoops. All right. So that brought us to a couple rounds of design and concepting, I think 2 or 3, some back and forth with the team, where we were able to come to these finalized logos. And what I want to present here is the style guide. And what a style guide does is it kind of is just a representation of, it helps you know what the intent was. And in this particular case, my intent. This is based on, 1 part best practice and 1 part preference or style. This sometimes this stuff is simply a matter of taste or simply a matter of preference. And this is the way I see it working the best. Doesn't mean that it was the only way that it could work in some of these situations, but in terms of getting us into those winning situations, these are the easiest, most sustainable ways to have success with the new brand mark.
Luke, we appreciate you doing a think aloud with us. I just want to say that in teaching, often we call that like a think aloud. You're sharing your thoughts about how this came to be, and I know we really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I always find that things are I just want to know that it was considered. I don't have to agree with it or always love it, but I do want to know why someone got to where they got. That'll help me, kind of participate fully in its success going forward. So the brand identity is, to me, these are the primary logos. If you just had your choice, you would use these 2 logos. No one outside of your audience, and even that's going to take a little bit of teaching, would know what Epic was or stood for unless you put the text with it. There's no, you're not going to put billboards up all over your region helping people, gain awareness about what Epic stands for, and then if eventually 2 or 3 years later, drop the words that go with it. This is every time that you do something, that you brand it, and you think you want people to know what it is, you would use this whole logo. You would use the Epic word mark with the fun exclamation mark I, and then you would either be able to do it in a vertical sense or in a horizontal sense. I don't have a huge preference for one of these over the other as the primary. My assumption is that this one on the left, the vertical one, will fit in most spaces better, just because this could end up getting a little wide or a little too squished in some situations. So, you know, if Epic sponsors a 5K, I would probably pick this one right here. Now, every logo has to work on white. Every logo has to work on black. Every logo has to work as a one color item. And that goes for dark and light backgrounds. So what I do in here is I just kind of show you if it was on purple, which is what I would choose to be the background color if you wanted to use the primary logo on a dark color, then you would do it like this. But if it needed to be one color on black, you would drop the colors. So purple on black. And then I just start to show different elements here in terms of how many blocks we're using. So this first one is, we drop everything. It's just the Epic logo. This is where, this is the type of logo you would use when you've already introduced yourself. So maybe this goes on a presentation in the bottom right-hand corner where people are literally in your building. So they have a good sense of who you are. So you can kind of reduce how much you need to show. Also, if you needed to do it at a really small size, which also probably would qualify for some kind of, you know, presentation corner, this keeps you from having illegible acronym text underneath it because it got so small that you couldn't even see it. And again, we look at one color. This is an example of one color on black. Like if you had to do black and white on white, sorry, black and white with black on the white, or even there will be times where you have to do one color on top of even something like purple. So that could look like this. Kind of a secondary mark that we developed is this cookie. And the cookie kind of is a nice way to kind of put it into a small, and I'm just realizing I should have thought of this harder. This should be the social icon. I'll make that fix in a little bit. It's a way to kind of tightly package everything that we want to do. We want to get the Epic word mark in there. We want to get all the letters around it that help us know what that is. And then we get a little nod to GRREC here without the river. We also have one with the river, just in case management comes after you and want more GRREC in there. There's also one color versions of the cookie in case you need those. So that's without the river, with the river. And then we also have the standard logo with the river. So this is when you want to give a nod to GRREC with the primary logos. You got one color versions, you got all color versions. It's all in here. Let's see here. This is kind of some usage rules that I like to throw in. These are very restrictive and don't always have to always be followed, but if everyone always followed them, you'd never have a situation where you thought, I wish they hadn't done that with the logo. So best not to use it at super, super, super small sizes. For print, 0.75 inches is a good way to think about that. Just try to keep it big enough so that these letters are legible when you print it out. Control space around the logo ensures that it's presented with clarity. So never put anything like so close to it that the logo now feels crowded and somebody has to make a decision as to whether or not that's part of the logo or not. So a good way to do that is just to take the width of the E here and put that all the way around it, and try not to let anything encroach into its space. That'll help it stand alone. Other do nots are, don't create other logo-like graphics that use the logo icon. Don't use it in words, headlines, or sentences. Don't rotate it, invert it, spin it, angle it, or pivot it. Just let it always kind of sit with the baselines that working in a really legible way. Don't skew it, bevel it, fold it, dimensionalize it, stretch it, or otherwise alter the shape of the logo. Don't recreate the logos by hand or computer drawing. Don't use the logos over backgrounds or photographs with really distracting patterns or elements. That keeps it from being a clear image. I'll show you one later where I do that, but I throw some shadow behind it to help it stand out. And then don't enclose the logo in an unimproved shape, especially when you have an approved shape, like a cookie. So again, these are very rigid. There may be times where you have to break it. What we don't want is someone making shirts where the logo is like diagonal and has a huge dimensionalized bevel to it that makes it unrecognizable. When the logo gets in the hand of a designer who has the ability to know, they're probably a little more seasoned with tools like all of these. Sometimes it's better for them to break the rules to create something unique. But in general, I just kind of say, just let the logo be the logo and do your creative stuff elsewhere around it. These are some sample social icons that you could use for Twitter or Facebook or wherever you guys do that stuff, maybe YouTube. And I was just mentioning it probably would have been smart to put the cookie here instead of the logo, although Epic reads pretty big here too. So I think you could use it for either. You could use the cookie or the vertical here. This is one of those scenarios where you obviously wouldn't want to use the horizontal because it gets too wide and it would get squished and all you would really see is the background. Created a more expansive color palette than just the ones I showed you earlier so that you would have some extra background colors to use for things like presentations or slides. So you got purple, blue, green, orange, and black, but then you also have a soft version of each one of those colors with the hex numbers in here, and hopefully, whatever program you're using will allow you to use one of these color codes to help you get to the exact color we're looking for. The typography, Dr. Moat shared with me that Lotto or Lato, I actually don't know how to say it. I've known the font for a long time, but I've never actually said it out loud. Lotto being used as something that you would use in your presentations or materials or handouts. And then he asked me to pick a serif. I picked Georgia just because of its ubiquity in terms of it being on every computer that's known to man, so you wouldn't have to go download it or buy it. I would use Lotto as much as you can and let Georgia be there when you need to look a little more serious or create a heading that stands out a little bit from maybe some paragraph text. Does someone have a specific question about typography that we could cover right now?
Luke, I do. I'm Kate Winteska, and I work K5, and kind of my focus area is K2. And so both of those fonts, when I went to create something with those fonts today, and both of them have rounded features in terms of A and G. And so for primary, I didn't know if we might add or could trade out Georgia or something for something that had like more of a ball and stick, like a Zahner Blouser, an Avenir, Lexa Dexa, something something that would match how we would expect students to form the letters in the classroom.
Specifically on the sans serif, did you say Avenir?
I like the Lato better than I like the Georgia. So if I was going to trade something, I don't know. It would make probably more sense as the sans serif, but I don't know.
I was trying to give one, my intent was to give one sans serif and one serif, just in case you wanted to pair them together or needed something that needed a little more like paragraph reading ability. You have Georgia available. Lotto came from my conversation with Dr. Moats. I'm open to either here. Neither one of these is the font in the brand mark. That's kind of a proprietary, expensive one. So I'm open here. I think both of these, or the ones that you mentioned, all kind of pair well enough. So I'm happy to update this however you guys see fit for your needs.
And I am early childhood, and so I have the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Lato did come from GRREC, and so that's something I was actually going to, because I had been using that recently too, and that's something I was going to talk with GRREC about, that it's really not best practice for early childhood.
Yeah.
So we really do, if we have to keep that one, I do just want to say I agree with Kate. It would be really helpful if we had something like that didn't have the extra curl on the A, or
and like the loop, the curl on the T,
right,
and G.
Because even this version of Avenir right here that I've just done still has the stuff you don't want, right? So it's a specific version of Avenir, probably.
Honest, this is better. Like if you look, I'm more okay with this, especially in like the G. Like the G's and the A's are the priority, but is this later? I don't, yeah.
This is Avenir.
Okay.
I was also going to just ask about accessibility. We are literacy. So with the serif one, thinking about dyslexia, students who might struggle to read that as a kind of brand, then do we want to be responsive to that? Since a lot of our work is starting in literacy, and really focus on the sans serif fonts.
Absolutely. Universal design is one of our key components. So I think we need to look at font. I just looked up the universal design font. Let me.
And I'm a good font snob. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I want to talk to this issue, and then just to continue the conversation. I think you all bring up good points. However, I do think that we need to think about our materials are not who is the audience for our material. I want a serif because it breaks up font use, like for headings and those types of things. I have used, when you look at, for example, the web pages that I designed for registration, I used Lato and I used Merriweather because we didn't have Georgia as an option. I just found Merriweather. Actually, I went on a website and found that Merriweather was one of those fonts that looks pretty nice with Lato. So I like having that option. It's like pairing Cambria and Calgary together. I like those. I think it's good to have that as an option. Now, if we're talking about materials for students, that's a whole different That's a whole different topic. I think it is good for us to go back and look at something like Lexadeca or something like that that's going to be used on students, specifically products that we are developing that teachers would use with students. I see that. I don't see the issue as being as important for me when we're talking about adults as it is for students. So I'm open. I don't think we can get away from Lato, you guys. I think that is the GRREC font, and unless, I can go to Bart and I can say, our group doesn't want to use Lato, and I'll see how he reacts and what he says about that. And I'm fine to do that. But, they made that choice on purpose. I thought it was going to be Barlow, but then they went to this Lato. So I don't know how serious that is. I love Lexadeca, but I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. Lexadeca, whatever it is, because it is a font that seems to be very easily read by people who are visually impaired. I was using it for many things prior to GRREC making the change to Lato. So I'm hearing what everybody is saying. I think my suggestion would be for us to consider adding a font that meets the needs of students that is closer to a Zahner Blaser type of text, if that's where we want to go, so that we have that for early childhood and for early primary.
We might even put that in the style guide as like a curriculum font or a teaching font or something like that.
I was going to say, because we'll make lots of graphic organizers and things that they'll reproduce and use in their classroom. Also, when we're modeling strategies and trainings and different things, just if we have like, this is going to be our font that we use. Just many times we go into classrooms and teachers purchase materials off of websites with cute fonts that then are not accessible to students. So we really want to model that practice in our presentation materials. And so if we can just have one that when we say, okay, we're going to use this font to model an accessibility font, that would be something that I would like just to have on there. And then I have to step out and take my son rock climbing practice. So
be careful.
Yeah, it's not me, it's him. So yeah. Okay.
If we do choose a curriculum font, like Audrey, like you were talking about, we would want to consider how well it pairs. Like, can we have all three fonts on the same page? Because if I am modeling a strategy with teachers and it's like with sound boxes or something like that, I'm going to want to model it with the with the font that matches what we would expect out of students. It looks like Allison has added the accessibility fonts.
Yes.
And I know it's not something that we have to decide now, but
I
just
put that in there too for our own team's reference, because I just looked this up last week for another project, because UDL and accessibility for all types of learners and educators is at the core of my heart. And so I just looked up font last week because I wanted to I have not been cognizant, or have not been as aware of that in the past. And that's a way that I've grown lately, is to realize that that's really important. It's something I just hadn't thought of in the past. So that is what I found on an accessibility website. If that is something that helps us discuss things later.
Awesome. I love the heart behind that.
Nice. Yeah, what's so nice about this too, that since it's been recorded, our chat will be recorded too. So we'll have this when we go back as a team, we can look at that. That's great.
I'll let you guys put a pin in that and talk more about that, and I'll update the style guide once we have a resolution there. it all makes sense to me what you're saying. And I think there's going to be a solution at the end of it. It won't be the end of the world if there's 3 fonts on this page. You know, the goal is to create familiarity with the audience over time by using the same fonts over and over, so that they kind of know when they're seeing something that's from you. And even if there's 3 there, they're going to get that. The last thing I have in this style guide is just some design samples. These aren't like on order or anything. These are just digital mock-ups that represent the way that I see the logo being used in different applications. So things like a hat, or a sticker on a one color sticker on a computer, or a tote bag, which I seem to remember being very important to teachers when I was in school. Things like presentation slides. Here's a version of a one color with a little shadow behind it on top of an image that has a decent amount going on, but you can see there's still plenty of clarity there. You can still see it really well. An example of incorporating some orange, or a fun background pattern with the exclamation mark I. A full color primary logo on a backpack or a t-shirt. Just common applications that we want to make sure the logo will work on. Everybody's new favorite phone case. Here's an example of the primary vertical on a black sweatshirt. A cookie sticker, cookie on a sweatshirt, a cookie on the upper left. These are just different ways that kind of follow the guidelines that help you all get a sense for how to use the logo when you encounter it, a situation where you need to figure out what application you want to use. That kind of brings me to the end of what I have prepared. So I'm happy to open it up for questions, or, hey, I want to see that slide again, or anything like that.
Luke, I just want to say thank you for your work on it. And I really like that you made it still be readable, but also creative, and incorporating all the colors. And thank you for letting us sort of feel free to share our thoughts and ideas. I appreciate that in this time. And I know this took an incredible amount of time for you to do. So we just want to say thank you.
Thank you. It was really fun. To give you one little more sense of the thinking behind this, this font right here was not the first one we were going after. I kind of felt like, oh, we should incorporate the font that's already used with the GRREC logo. And to Dr. Mote's credit and Jamie's credit, we just kind of looked at it and felt like it was a little boring and didn't have enough personality, and lacked a little bit of like humanity to it. And they were open to this other font that I brought called Really Sans. And what Really Sans has that's really neat about it is it has Really Sans large and it has Really Sans small. It's the same font, but it has a little bit different, technically like ligatures and baseline descenders. Like there's just a little bit difference between the small and the large that made it perfect for this situation where we needed one thing that was kind of a display font and one that needed to be really legible at a small size. And so by using that font, we're able to get the best of both worlds of it. So the language below the word mark still looks like the font above it, even though there are actually these little minuscule differences to make it more legible at a small size. And I was really excited to get to use it. This font's been on my radar for a long time and I haven't been able to use it yet.
Deanna wrote in the chat box that she loves the cookies on the sweatshirts.
Oh, same. If you haven't noticed, I tend to get really attached to these things as they.
I actually like all three of those sweatshirts there, the light gray, the purple, and the darker gray. I could see myself wearing all of them.
Y'all, I forgot the most important part of this presentation. So part of what my delivery is a font, or sorry, is a file book with all the logos in it. And you can see it here. It's this Epic logo file book. And inside it, there's all these other folders. So try to use these first. There's literally a folder in there that has the primary logos in an EPS version and a PNG version. Then we have all of the other versions of the logo, the cookie version, the cookie with the river, the horizontal with the river, only the word Epic, the primary horizontal, the primary vertical, and the vertical with the river. So when you go into each one of these, there's got to be, I can make this bigger. There we go. So you can see when you click into one of these folders, like I'll click into the cookie folder and then I'll make it bigger. The names of the files try to tell you when you should be using it. So Epic cookie, one color, black means that you would use that if you had a white background or a light background and you needed a one color black logo, you could use this one. Epic cookie with white, if I kind of preview that, you can see it's that one color white logo. And then down here, you've got the full color. So each one of these folders has the logos in it that you might need. So there's what, 42, 50 variations of the logo here that hopefully you'll be equipped with when you need it in a specific situation. These are all approved. You know, you don't have to wonder if you're doing the right thing. Hopefully you won't have to reach out to a designer to have them make some tweak to it. Hopefully you'll have almost everything that you need in this big folder.
Your naming conventions are so logical that I just admire that. I wish you could see what my files look like.
Oh, and the other thing that's in this file book is the style guide that you can come in and see right with it.
Luke, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with backgrounds, and I'm sorry, I've looked at the file book thoroughly, but you know, this is one of those things that I didn't put in my long-term memory, and my short-term memory isn't very good either. So at this point, if we wanted to use some of the backgrounds that you have provided for like examples, which is the solid colors with the I and the dots, the exclamation point and I, as kind of that subtle background. Did you provide us those files, or how would we create those backgrounds? Because I'm sorry, because like for headers on a web page or in other uses like on slides and things, I think having that is so powerful. Even if we had it in black with the gray, I don't know how that would look, but I would like to have those options for us to use, where it's appropriate to use.
Yeah, I'll make you a couple and put them in the file folder, and it'll just be kind of the exclamation background folder. And there will be one that has like a white opacity. There'll be one that has a dark opacity, one that has a purple. That way it will be big enough. You'll have EPS and PNG. It'll be big enough that you could drop it into a presentation and expand it onto the background of the slide or the worksheet or the whatever. And you'd be able to literally put it in there and use it. And because it'll be transparent, it'll work kind of as a background element. And I'll also give you some just full opacity ones in case you get in a situation where you want to drop it in and then control your own opacity based on what you're using it for.
Okay, thank you. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. This is the time to ask questions. If you have any questions at all, we will revisit the discussion. And I'll get back.
I think we've lost you, Steve. You're back.
Thank you, Luke. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you all. It's been a really
Hello?
fun project.
Yes, you're back, Steve.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear
Well,
you.
I'm between Cave City and Park City, and there's always a bad area here. We'll talk about the font issue, but and I want that as a style guide when we make a decision, so that it's on record, and regardless of who comes and who goes, we have a record and a history of what the brand tradition is for Epic. So I don't want to keep you any longer unless we have questions. I don't know, Jamie, if there are other questions in the chat box,
or if anybody else just wants to affirm me. You guys are so affirming. This has been very helpful.
Yes, I haven't said anything yet. I'm just taking it all in. I'm out of my comfort zone here. I have no idea about branding and marketing, but I'm enjoying your thinking processes. And I think that you've been very reflective in trying to capture what we need. And I think that it's innovative and it looks exciting, and I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Luke, be sure and look in the chat because you're getting a lot more affirmation from folks.
Oh, man.
Steve or Jamie, you can maybe answer this. Is this something that we'll be using on our email signature, something like this? Like if I send out emails on behalf of Epic, or are we going to keep what we have? How is that impacted in any of this?
so let me attempt to answer that question. The email signature that you have now, you need to keep it. That has the GRREC, because we are always primarily employees of GRREC, so we want to make sure that's there. I do think it would be nice for us to create, either to take one of the primary logos and add it into the signature. For example, when I was at Russellville, I had my primary signature, but I also had a graphic about our reading program, so that people also saw what we were doing with the reading program. And maybe Luke, you might want to say whether that's a good thing to do or not. Should we add the Epic logo to our signatures or not? I can see us doing that, but I don't know if that's best practice.
Yeah, I could see a situation where you have it probably is just driven by your individual roles and how often you're all Epic or how often you're Epic plus some GRREC, or I don't know the details on all that. But I do see a situation where you could use both logos, give them both kind of their own space in the design. Not necessarily use the combo logo, but use them kind of both together, but with enough space around each of them that they each feel like distinct or unique items. And then let your title or the text in the title kind of help describe your relationship with both organizations and why you might have both those pieces of art next to your name.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. And, we might play around with that, Luke, and send you an email and let you take a look at it and give us some feedback on it. Deanna, I think the email address that we have for Epic, for our customers, epic@grec.org, definitely there's no email signature. I don't know if there's an email signature there or not right now, but if we were to use that to reply to a client question or something, I think definitely we could put the Epic logo in there as the signature for that email. Do others have any thoughts about that? And just as an FYI, all of us are 100%, Luke, on pretty much 100% on Epic. Deanna does have a little time on something else, and I also work across the organization. But Epic is most of our primary work team, I guess is the best way to put it.
Part of that too is, it's a little difficult. You want to make sure that because your email is a GRREC email, that you can kind of prove that you do work there for somebody who wouldn't know that Epic was part of, if you're trying to be the authority on something and they need to know that, hey, I work at GRREC, and then as part of that, I work on the Epic team. There's just ways to kind of show all that information and let them kind of reconcile it without confusing them in the process. And, scrolling is cheap, so it can be as tall as it needs to be.
Yeah. I was thinking sometimes people now tell about their Google certification and put extra badges and things on there. So it's not, some GRREC staff already do put an extra, some have several. I mean, anyway, it is something great to think about. Well, thank you so much, Luke. It's incredible. We do appreciate your passion and your knowledge and sharing your thoughts. I think everybody said that already.
Thank you guys for giving me the space. Everybody doesn't do that.
We want to be those people that give the space. That's what Epic is. So I'm glad that we appreciate you saying that, because that's who we want to be. So thank you so much. Anything else? Or are we good to go, guys?
I'm good. Thank you for answering our questions.
You bet. Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Luke, so much, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks. See you.
Bye-bye, friends.